Good evening and welcome. It is a wonderful Monday night. It feels like summer is flying by, but it's an awesome opportunity because we get to hang out with all of you. So we do want to thank you for taking time out of your Monday night to join John and myself. And Cubby's just busy tonight. That's just all there is to it. I mean, Cubby's living the fair life right now. It's pretty big out where he's at. So for those of you that are wondering what happened to Cubby, don't worry. Don't worry. He is safe. He's good. He's just he's working. So
One of his big contracts for the year is playing 10 dates or whatever the Iowa State Fair is, and he does trivia there. So yay for Cubby. He's been doing that for quite a long time and has his regulars there and has a lot of fun with that. So yeah, he'll be back next week. So, Dan, tonight we've got our topic. We're going to be talking about 10 things that new DJs or beginning DJs need to know, and we're going to break these up into segments similar to what we do in a question and answer night. So there will be a little break, like a 5-second break between those. For those of you watching the whole show live, you're going to you'll be annoyed by that, I'm sure. You know, that's just the way we are as human beings. But for those of you who aren't watching it live, and you'll be seeing just the segments because we're going to put the individual segments up later so they can be quick reference points if you need to go back and see those. Or if you want to share one of those with someone who is just starting out and put the question for the 17th time in one of the DJ Facebook groups. So we're going to jump into that. And then for those of you watching, come back at 10 o'clock Eastern if you're like get bored and you want to go do something else. 10 o'clock Eastern, Hanging with Howie is going to go on DJNTV.com/chill, so you don't want to miss that later. That's kind of the hangout time where you guys will be able to argue about everything we've said and say, you know, these guys just don't have no idea what they're talking about.
that's pretty much what they always do.
Pretty much.
I love Howie and the guys, but that's pretty much what they do.
Yeah,
and then every time.
And then they tell it like it is, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing, you know. So. And thankfully, we get to be tonight, and then theirs is about 3 or 4 weeks down the road. So then it's a completely different situation.
But doesn't that mean they get the last word?
That's true. But you know what? Hey, we're married. We're used to not getting the last word. Anyway, let's get the first segment going here right after this. So the first thing in our 10 things you need to know, and actually there's a couple of bonus ones we're going to hit in this also, is the type of business you run is really important. And you need to really start, I think, from that point. Dan, when you started your business, which direction did you go when you were like, okay, I need to have a business and I need to do this official business name and get these things done? LLC, S Corp, sole proprietor, where did you go?
Sole proprietor is where I went. Once in the very beginning, it was just like, hey, write your check out to me. Technically, my business card has a name on it, but there was no record of it anywhere. That was the very beginning. But no, when I first started taking it seriously and realized that, you know, this is what I needed to do, I set it up as a sole proprietorship. It was just me, and I really didn't know a better direction to go at that point.
Yeah, and many of us started the sole proprietorship. The big thing with it, though, is in order to do to get some of the next steps in this, you need to have this done. Whether you'll be registered with your state, maybe a local, and you need to be on the national level to have your business, whatever, all registered and done properly, and making sure you're not infringing on someone's trademark, which happens quite a bit, unfortunately. Sole proprietor is what many of us start with. Some move on to an LLC, limited liability corporation. Some go to an S Corp, which also has some protections. There's different tax advantages with each one. And if you're wanting to get into that and you're like, whoa, this is really interesting, don't ask on a Facebook group. Go spend the $20, $30, $40, for 5 minutes or whatever it'll be, and talk to an accountant. I don't know what they're charging, like $100 an hour. I don't know. But it would be 1 hour with them is going to save you a lot of headache and a lot of problems down the road. So go hire a professional who can give you an educated opinion as opposed to the Facebook group jury over there.
Well, and they're going to know your local situations, right? They're
For
going
sure.
to know your local deals and the state situation where Joe Schmo that chimes in might be under a different circumstance, at least when it comes to the state level type things.
And even in our Facebook groups, we have international DJs who are coming in there. So now we not only have difference in between state and state, sometimes between county and county, then we go from country to country. So there's just so many levels, and it's just best, as you say, to find that local person who's going to know what they're talking about. Hopefully. All right, let's jump to our second one here tonight. So once you've kind of gotten your business set up, now it's time to really start to evaluate. And one of the areas that I think that most people starting any business overlook is understanding the market that they have. Who is their competition? Who are they going to be selling to? And Dan, how have you gone about kind of getting your head wrapped around this side of it when you have to start evaluating what's potential and who's out there?
I think it's, and we kind of skipped over this a little bit in the last one of the direction that we want to go, but as far as the type of DJ that you're going to be looking at, figure out who you are trying to target, not necessarily ideal client, and that's another whole can of worms I'm sure will open, but just the idea of, what type of market are you going for? Are you doing weddings? Are you doing parties? Are you going to go after the bar scene? Are you going to go after the club scene? What is exactly that you're trying to do? And once you have that, then you can start to say, okay, I'm going to pick this area, and these are the people that are known in my area for doing this. And it doesn't take long for you to do some quick searches, or even look at some, if it's weddings, right? Looking at venues, and you can see in their social media posts who are the DJs that tend to be at those locations. So start picking the places that you want to go, and this works for bars as well, because they're going to promote whoever their entertainment is
For
for that
sure.
night. But it gives you an idea of who they are, who's there, and then you can do kind of your own research on them. Ideally, just make connections, because a lot of the DJs are going to be nice enough about it, and the ones that aren't, well, don't talk to them.
Yeah, exactly. There's enough good people out there for surely. And I think understanding that what you offer, you may be offering something that is not going to have a ton of potential in your market. That happens. If I wanted to be a bar mitzvah DJ and I wanted to do that in my 50-mile radius market, I don't know if I'm guessing maybe there's been a bar mitzvah that has happened, but I'm not going to, if it is, I don't know of anyone who knows it happened, type of thing. There's going to be opportunities, and there's going to be limited opportunities, and there could be lots of opportunities, and understanding that market. And that's all research. And that isn't just on the computer. Sometimes that means you're going to be going to places, looking, shaking hands. Really, the more you put into this part of it, I think the more successful you will be down the road, because occasionally you'll get into a situation and find out that, whoa, there's just not enough business to support my bar mitzvah business here. But if I'm good at it and I have some talent and I really have a passion for it, maybe I have to relocate, or maybe I have to have another office somewhere and do that, whatever it is. But understanding your market is going to save you, I think, a ton down the road.
And talking with those communities, and just using the bar mitzvah, the bar and bat mitzvah for example, if you reach out to those communities and talk with them, you can find out, where is the go-to type of direction for this. And once you're also making connections with some of the, competitors, but also will end up becoming your friends for, those DJs, you can find out, have they even done any of whatever you're thinking? Um, don't say, well, it just can't be done in my backyard. It just might not be, there might not be enough to support solely that one side.
For surely. That's a big part. I think that a lot of us think that if we just work harder, it's going to come, and it will support us, even if it's not conducive to your area, your market, your even talent sometimes. So that's an important thing. Let's jump to our next one here. So we're going to switch to kind of more of some business topics with our next couple of points you need to know in your beginning. And the first one is dealing with business expenses. You need to know how to keep track of business expenses. Now, this is the stuff for most of us that is kind of boring, or we hate doing it, because you've got this vision of a shoebox sitting at your desk, and every time you come home, you're like dumping receipts into it. Now, that's how Dan keeps track of everything when he first started. Right, Dan?
First started.
There's
Now, in all fairness, those were my receipts from Atlantic City, and there's some places that required cash only. I shouldn't say required. They're going to charge extra for credit card. I'm paying cash.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done like that. But no, I got to give kudos to you and MJ about this, because there was an idea that we talked about one night with this idea of tracking, that I think is going to be absolutely key, and is going to save a ton of headaches for a lot of people. And that is to have, first off, a business credit card, right? And use that for all of your expenses on your business, because then at the end of the year, it's tracked. There's not digging out that receipt. There's not going to try and find that PDF. It's tracked. And depending upon the level of the credit card, it may even be broken down for you, which makes it
Yes.
even nicer.
Mm-hmm. That has
So
really come on.
definitely, you guys, that saved me. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe how much that has saved me over the past couple of years.
One of the things that, so having that, so when we go to Sam's Club or Costco and we have to pick up some things for, you know, some supplies for the business, so it's like, okay, there's times we're checking out 3 times in a self checkout. This is for this business, this is for this business, and this is our personal stuff. And it's a pain in the butt, and people behind you will look at you a little bit weird sometimes. But as Dan said, at the end of the year, it is such a time saver to be able to download that spreadsheet that most credit cards allow you to do, and then bing bang, you're good to go. But
Not to mention, just I can't imagine the number of uh, pieces, we'll say expenses, that I've just not written off
mm-hmm,
because I've lost the receipt or I forgot about it or I just didn't have a great way of tracking it. And so it's like, yeah, I caught most of them, but there's probably quite a few that I let slip through the cracks just from I'll just kind of call it pure laziness, pure unorganization,
right.
and not having that quick just download the Excel sheet or whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
from the company.
Especially when a person's using, and I want to talk a little bit about checking accounts, because when you're doing local things, you're occasionally writing out a check, and when you don't fill in the memo properly and it's a check you've written out to wherever, and then it's like, okay, I don't remember, was that this or that or the other thing? You know, yeah. So one way to solve this is to have your personal checkbook. That's your, you know, for your household, and then to have a business checkbook. And this jumps back to us up to figuring out which business model is important, or is what you're needed, is because in order to open a business checkbook, you're going to have some certain things, some documentation and such to show your bank in order to be able to open up a business checkbook. It's going to vary between bank to bank. Just keep in mind that sometimes when you go in there and you're like, hey, I want to open a business account, and they're going to say, great, I need this documentation, this documentation, this doc. The only thing I would say that they probably aren't going to need for surely is proof of insurance. That's not their world. But of course, if you have a loan, that's a different story. Then they may need the proof of insurance. But they will need some sort of official documentation to be able to open the account. So that's something to keep in mind. But once you have those checkbooks, it's nice to be able to do that. And one little tip when you have multiple checkbooks is if you're going to be, I don't know, did we talk about, trying to see about pay? Did you have that up here?
I mentioned the piece that, you know, when you're thinking about
Oh yeah,
expenses,
there you go. Yeah, it's in this one. Go ahead, please.
yeah, when you're thinking about expenses, oftentimes we just think about just the things that we pay, right? The gear that we do, the music, and all that kind of stuff. But one idea that you really should start to think about is how are you paying yourself, right? I've seen too many people who treat their business account like basically another personal account, right? So basically, after I pay my expenses, whatever's left, that's my money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're really kind of cheating yourself that way. And what you should get into the habit of doing is either figuring out a percentage of every gig or figuring out a consistent salary for yourself as the owner that you are going to take, right? And then by doing it that way, either one of those ways, you're guaranteeing yourself that you're always going to be making money, right? You're guaranteeing that you're going to have it, and you're also going to guarantee, I shouldn't say guarantee, almost guarantee that the business is going to have money in it to do the things that you need it to do, to replace the gear when something breaks, to make that upgrade that you've been eyeing for a while and you've been wanting to do, but you didn't know if you'd have the money. If it's in the business account, it becomes an easier way to do it.
Certainly.
And when you, depending upon how you set it up, and this kind of goes back to some of that, you know, LLC, sole proprietor, and those kind of pieces, there are, again, talk to the accountant, tax ways that you can set it up, because now you're taking a salary, and if you set up the business, I'm not the accountant. We'll just say talk to the accountant about how that can work for if you're paying yourself as opposed to just the money sitting there.
And I think one things that people, when they start talking about this, okay, if I pay myself, what happens if the business account, all of a sudden I'm upside down and I have an expense or I need to buy a piece of gear? Again, accountants are one to talk to, but there are ways of loaning, you personally loaning the business money and such. There are things out there, and they have ways to handle it. Not going to go into super details, but some of the things that we get concerned about, once we learn how to do it properly, we can survive. One book I will mention here is a book by the title Profit First. If you haven't had a chance to, if you've never read that or haven't run across it, Amazon, Kindle, whatever you do want, go there and get it. It will, just to give you a quick little synopsis of it, basically is that the first thing you do is figure out what you want to make, and that you pay yourself first, then you pay the other expenses. And it's kind of a change up from a lot of other business ways, but I think for most people, it is a great way to think about running your business, and then eventually get to the point where you can run your business that way. And again, if money is needed, there's ways to work with that. But having that account where I've got my business account, I have my personal account, and I can cut myself a check and transfer it over, and that now I've paid myself for my time, whatever it is, and then the business has got its money to run on. And sometimes that might make you make a decision on saying, maybe I can't afford the newest uplights, and I'm going to have to make that my 2022 uplights work for 2 more years. That happens. But at least you're making an intelligent decision based on facts rather than emotion. And sometimes that's a good thing to do.
And I will say from a personal side, so when I started doing this process, someone gave me this idea of taking that percentage and doing it that way. I found that my business became much healthier, right? Yeah, I've raised my prices, and I'm sure that's helped quite a bit, but having that split in what was coming to me and what was going to the business allowed the business itself to grow within its body, right? And to have that bank account piece go to it. And I'll throw an extra piece in there as well. When I decide to do an upgrade, as long as it doesn't take more room in the house, my wife is like, "Are you paying with the business money?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "I don't care then." So that has helped, because when it was from my personal account, we had to talk through everything.
Yeah, I like that. It doesn't take more room in the house. No, honey, this won't take any more room. I'm just throwing our bed out. So we're going to be sleeping on subwoofers now. But hey, they're really nice subwoofers.
Especially when they're turned on.
Yeah, there we go. All right, let's jump to our next topic. There we go. So the next one, again, we're going to be in a couple of business ones. This one is knowing how to protect your business. And there's a lot of different avenues with this one. And Dan, I want to when did this side of it become a concern for you? Because I think for a lot of people, it doesn't happen right away.
The idea of protecting yourself, I'll be honest, it never really even came into focus with me until I started attending like national conventions and understanding that there was such things as liability insurance. The venues around me, I'll be honest, up to this point, I don't think I've ever been asked. I had a school ask one time. That was about the closest that I even got to it. But I never had a venue ask for proof of liability or anything along those lines. So it was one of those, as I kind of learned the better way to run my business, I realized that I should have it. And because, again, if something were to happen and they wanted to come after whatever might happen, they want to come after me, I could be losing a lot of personal things.
Right.
Especially with the way things were set up for me. So I did not want to put myself in that position. I started realizing that I needed to have something. And I also realized how incredibly inexpensive it is to have that in liability insurance, something that, again, I assumed was going to cost me thousands of dollars before I actually ever pursued information, and then realized, for liability, under $200 or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, that suddenly became the no-brainer.
And for those out there listening to this and they're thinking, well, I'm going to have an LLC, limited liability corporation, and that will protect me. Maybe. And that this is one of those areas that when a potential for lawsuits exist, there's going to, unfortunately, if somebody gets hurt and it looks like you were involved, you were in the room, or you were part of whatever, you can be named. And sometimes an LLC or a sole proprietorship, or not a sole proprietor, a corporation can protect you and give you some separation between the business and you. Sometimes it doesn't. So just to count on that, not a good idea. I've talked to DJs who said, I don't own anything. Let them come after me. I'm a single guy. I live in an apartment, and the most expensive thing I own isn't my car. It's my Jordans, tennis shoes, and my controller. Those are the two most. I don't need liability insurance. That is true, but what you're then guaranteeing is if something would happen and it's your fault and you do get sued and you lose, you're going to be having to possibly file bankruptcy and hoping that will fix things, and it may or may not. So liability insurance, as Dan said, is kind of a cheap for what you can get out of the get for potential problems down the road. But then there's other things. That's just the liability if something happens. But then there's potential damage to business or stolen gear. And a lot of people have gone the route of having an inland fire. Is it an inland marine or inland fireman's or something insurance policy that will cover the gear. And it's so many dollars per 1,000 or 100 or whatever, however they figure it out. And you've got some will ask you to list gear with serial numbers or just take pictures, whatever. There's a lot of things to it. But the idea behind that is that if your trailer with your DJ stuff is stolen and you've gone and you've done the steps properly, that you will have help getting the gear replaced. So you're not going to be completely out. Now, the question with that one becomes does a person do that, or do you self-insure? I haven't had gear insurance in 20 years. I think once we went from multi-system down to just the 2 or 3 of us, it's like if something happens, so be it.
It's almost like the extended warranty that you get. Now, I'm not talking about cars, but like when you go to the store and you're buying some electronics and they go, all right, for $30, it's like, okay, well, what percentage of that is that really going to be? And what's the chance that this actually breaks? It becomes that game that you're potentially playing, with that. But I think as John said, I think, and this is just my personal, is that self. I know for a couple of years I did have it insured in case anything's, was stolen or something like that. It is a lot of hoops to jump through. If you have a bigger group, or you have maybe you're in a situation where it's more likely to happen, or the risk is higher, then it might be worth it. Otherwise, taking that money that you would have put and set aside and earmark it, like actually maybe having a separate account that you just throw, transfer money into out of every gig or out of every month, and say, okay, this is my insurance, right? This is my, and just have that building there. And then once you've got set to cover, then you don't have to make any more payments to it.
Yeah, exactly. You can use that as a little savings account, that knowing that, okay, once it hits $5,000, beyond that becomes my annual pizza money. So when I'm going to buy pizza, that'd be good. Pizza would be good.
That might be.
So then we've now we got to transfer into vehicle, because a lot of us, of course, have to use a vehicle to get to where we go. Well, if we're using it for business, many of our homeowner policies will not cover the vehicle if it's being used to transport a business gear to a business location to do business. Varies by location, varies by state, varies by company, but it very entirely could be that your car insurance would not cover if you hit someone and you were on your way to a show, as an example. That's a tough pill to swallow, because business vehicle insurance can be a nightmare to get into and to get, and expensive. But you want to make sure you check with your insurance, your current insurance carrier, to find out where that line is and where they're going to say, nope, we're not covering that.
And that definitely can be a state by state type of situation, because I know where I was at locally, I got a quote with a local company, and I didn't end up going with them, and they included it because I was reaching out for like a personal type of situation, and they included not only my vehicle but the trailer that I was going to be towing with it, knowing full well that it was going to be for business. So now, was it higher than what they would have quoted me if it was just for personal? I don't know, because I didn't go that direction.
Sure.
But at least it was able to be done, or the company was willing to do it.
Then we have location, if you're your business location, whether you have an office you're renting somewhere, or if you're using an office in the house and you're meeting with people, if you have people coming to a space in the house, you probably need to be looking at commercial insurance there, because if somebody's coming in and you are meeting with them and they slip and fall, well, why were they there? Well, they were coming in because we were meeting for my business. Oh, well, now we may not cover that particular one. And then, of course, if you have a separate office, there need to have all the insurances with that to make sure that you're covered and protecting yourself with that. It's a lot of little hoops, but you got to make sure that you're covering those. And then licenses to protect yourself, because there's going to be some licenses that you will need, and some of those will keep you from being shut down in different municipalities. So you want to make sure that you're there to protect your business from being shut down without having the proper license. Dan, take 2 minutes and talk about the physical side of it to protect your health now, as part of this protecting yourself and your business. The physical side, that process and that thought became, as you've continued in the industry, has become more of a bigger part of your life now. Talk about that, please.
I mean, first off, I never knew the shape I was in. Like when you see yourself every day and you're looking in the mirror and you always see yourself every day, you don't really realize it until something clicks in your head that decides, oh, I'm going to lose a few pounds. And then it's like, oh, man, I was heavier than I thought I was. There's so much that we do day in and day out when we're doing our events. We're lifting speakers, we're bending over, we're standing on concrete for hours on end. All those kind of things just weigh in on you. And the worse shape that you're in, the harder what we do is on your body.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying you have to. I mean, Mike Walter talked about this a little bit at DJX about the weight loss that he's done. It's been over 30 pounds, like since the beginning. I think it was since the beginning of the year, and just doing it. And I'm going to say, for lack of better terms, doing it the right way, like putting in the effort, putting in the the work to watch what he's doing and the exercising that he's doing, and it's little by little it's been taking off, and I think we're seeing the kind of a shift in our industry a little bit, as we're seeing some other names, Jason Janai, who's been he's been documenting his stuff and putting it up as far as how he's been doing, and just, oh my gosh, I saw him and I was like, wow, he I heard about it.
Yeah.
When I saw him in person, it really stood out. So there are things like that I think that are going to be important. But for me, I wanted to get into a better shape. I wanted to I started with I didn't like being idle. And I started with walking, and then it rained. And I went, okay, well, I can't walk today in the rain. Well, I could have, but I didn't want to. So what was I going to do? So then I looked for a well-balanced program that a friend of mine at the hospital recommended. And it allowed me to ease myself into weight loss. I didn't suddenly go up and try and lift a 500-pound dumbbell, but I worked my way into a program and worked my way to the point that I feel better and stronger than I ever have. And then I started running, and I was doing some things incorrectly and created some injuries. But those things have allowed me, because I was starting to get into better shape, it's allowed those injuries to heal faster than I think they would have otherwise.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense, because there's so many benefits from, getting that heart rate up there and exercising, that, the mental side of it, the physical side of it, it just really, and even the attitude, the anxiety that it'll help deal with. There's so many aspects to living a healthier lifestyle, which is, again, as Dan mentions, that Mike talked about, it's an exercise, and it's being an adult when it comes to food and beverages. There is really making good decisions. Not that you have to be the most strict person and you're eating salads for the rest of your life, but my way of looking at it, we were just having this conversation at supper tonight, is Lori, it's like, yeah, I went and I looked at something at the store, and it's like, oh my gosh, this has got 200 and some calories, and it's like, I look at something like that and with some sort of a pastry or whatever, that's 2 miles of running I've got to do. I mean, I enjoy running, but do I want to go and have to run 2 more miles to eat that? Or would I be better just to have an apple or a banana or, peanut butter sandwich, whatever?
And something else to add into that is if you're leading a sedentary type of lifestyle, when you have those moments or whatever that might happen in your health, they're they're more likely to take you by surprise. And,
Hmm.
and I'll use Todd Powers for example. For those of you that don't know him, you can check out his story, and he shared it a couple different times in some seminars, and basically, he started getting in better health and then had an episode. And had he just been living his life prior to trying to exercise, the doctor said that the heart attack that he had, I think they called it the Widowmaker,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
basically could have happened when he was laying on the couch, could have happened when he was watching his kids baseball game, or whatever it was. But because he had been exercising, he was more in tune with his body, and he was able to say something's not right, got to the doctor, and was able to get it taken care of before it ever was an issue.
Ooh, good for him. Wow.
So those are some of the other benefits. Like, sometimes we think of it from the standpoint of, if I start doing this, I'm not going to have an issue. And ideally that's what you want, right? That ideally we hope that.
Hmm.
But in the same respect, sometimes it's, I start doing this, and then if something doesn't feel right, I can fix it before I don't have an opportunity to.
Yes, my track coach from high school had a similar. He would go and he'd walk 4 or 5 miles every day. He actually did have the heart attack, but because he was in such good shape, he was able to survive the Widowmaker heart attack and wouldn't have done it without that. So, yeah, good stuff. Protecting your business and your health. Let's jump to our next topic here. 20 minutes there. Okay, the next one. We're going to hit the next couple kind of a little quicker with these. It really, somebody talked about this, and you guys have probably heard this, but in essence, if you don't, if you're doing arrows, if you're shooting arrows and such, there's this thing in the middle called a bullseye. And if you don't know where that goal is to hit that with the arrow, you're never going to be successful, because you're just launching arrows everywhere. But you have to have that goal of being able to hit the center of the bullseye. And with our businesses, is that we have to have a goal that we understand of what that goal is. And it may be different for many people. It might be booking 20 events. It might be becoming the greatest mixer in your area, and that you become the most revered DJ, whatever it is. Having I jumped to 6, didn't I? I did.
Yeah, it's all right. It kind of fits too with both of those, kind of fit together.
Actually, let's just combine the two. But having that goal and knowing where it is important, because then you can take and go from that goal, and you can have little steps to get there. Because if you just go and all of a sudden I want to book 1,000 shows a year for my multi-system company, and you're just starting out, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get there? Well, let's do baby steps now. That's my 10-year goal. Now what's my 5-year goal? Now what is it going to take to get from here to there in incremental steps? And a big part of that, let's do 5 separately. But a big part of that is taking the time in advance, kind of as we've talked about, other parts of it. If you can do these things before you're going out there and you're really pushing, you'll be changing it. You'll be modifying your goals as you go. It's just the way it is. It's a living, breathing document that you'll be creating of your goals and your targets and your steps. But when you do that, it just makes it so much easier to make business decisions on, is this good for my business? Is this bad for my business? Now, Dan, you were at DJX last week, and there's so many cool pieces of gear there. You looked at those, you saw those. What did you use for a criteria to decide if you were going to be buying or not buying gear last week?
For me, it comes down to my need. I've gotten to a point right now where I don't want to keep up with the Joneses. I don't want to kind of put myself in that position. There was a couple things that I had discussions with people about that were outside of what was at DJX, that kind of got me in the thought of, okay, if I did that, that would make things easier for me. That would make my setup faster. That cool factor, as nice as that might be, doesn't necessarily fit in to my decision, just because if I did that, kind of what we talked about before, I think my business would go belly up. There's so many cool things that are out there, but what's going to fit with what I foresee the direction my business should go. And that's been the other thing is, if you talk to me, maybe even just 6, 7 years ago, my goal and what I wanted out of my business um, was different.
Sure.
It was different, and it's going to lead into it. What we're going to talk about next is going to kind of lead from that. But as I kind of got into it, and I realized, that's great and all, but now I got that sitting over on my shelf. That didn't help me any. So when I made one purchase, I made one big purchase when I was there. And it was something that I kind of went in knowing, okay, I'm definitely going to get this type of product. What is it that I'm going to buy? And that was my final, that's how I did that decision was I wanted it.
Yeah. And you had an idea of how that you were going to implement that. And I think that's the part that sometimes is that, okay, we see ooh, that's really cool. I'm going to buy it. And then I'm going to figure out how to sell it, or I'm going to figure out how to implement it into that. And when you put the cart in front of the horse, sometimes you get lucky and the cart goes in the right direction, but most of the time the cart goes into the ditch. And then it ends up on my shelf back there, sitting, being the next chocolate fountain back there.
And there's the philosophy of, sell first and then buy. I'm leery about that kind of thing, because I also think that sometimes you can find yourself, if you don't recognize the amount of work that goes into it, you can find yourself getting stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, oh, that sounds great, and you start to sell it, and you got a client that buys into it, and you're like, oh, this is awesome, and then you get it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like way too much work for what I wanted to do.
Yeah, for what I can make on it. Yep.
And that's another like potential thing that you got to keep in mind with your goals is, what amount of work, what amount of time do you want to spend on that to reach the goal that you have. Right? If you mentioned about the 1,000 events with your multi-app, if that's a goal that you have and you want it for 3 years from down the road, you're going to have to be putting in a ton of time.
Yeah.
But if you're like, you know what, that's an attainable goal in 10 years, just throwing out
yep.
number, then without having to marry the business to do it.
For sure. And that really jumps us back up to our second one of knowing your market and what the potential is. It all ties in together. So let's jump to our next one. So one of the things you need to know when you're starting out with any business is basically what makes you unique. You need to know that USP, unique selling proposition or position, but you need to know what you're selling that's different. And Dan, you put a good note on this one, and I'm going to let you kind of take it for a little bit. Because
your unique selling position is not that you can rock the party. I don't care who you are. That is not your unique selling position, because I will tell you what, every DJ and their brother who comments on a post of somebody looking for a DJ on Facebook, that's what they say. I can rock the party. You got to hire me because I can rock. No. That's not what's going to set you apart. Where is your piece to the puzzle? What is that thing that's going to separate you from the person beside you that has the same gear, that has the same lights, that maybe they're both bald. I don't care. But like, what is going to be that piece? I'm curious, John, when you guys, when you were doing, especially your multi-op, because I can see that being kind of also a difficult piece. What was some of the things that you used for your USP?
That has changed so much over the years. And during that particular time, we were still able to utilize the unique music library, because this was ahead of the time of everyone having access to everything. So we traveled with one of the most full libraries of music in the state of Minnesota, especially the outstate area. That was one of our selling points. Another one is that our DJs could then take requests, and we're very good at taking requests. And that became, these were very simple things that sound today like they're really lame, but at that moment in time, think about it. At one time, electricity was exciting too. That was our thing. Today, there's only a couple of us, and with Michael, and myself are main ones, and it becomes and Alan Berg's podcast from last week, if you guys get a chance to follow Alan Berg's last week, towards the end of it, he talked about what can you bring to the party that no one else can bring. And generally that's ourselves. And what do I bring to a party, and what can I do at a party that no one else can do? That's the part that really becomes that question, and you have to answer that for yourself. And for myself, the way I can look at a room, the way I can read a room, the way I can take a room through this emotional roller coaster of an evening, and I can I can read them and understand where we need to go and how we need to do it. And it's going to sound weird, but I can massage the room and take it to places where they wouldn't have expected we were going to go. And it's done with music. It's done with microphone. It's done with activities. It's done with little crowd bumps here and there. But all these little things kind of work together so that we're able to create a night that people will remember as a great, fun night where they basically are like, this was so much an incredible experience. And I didn't, I didn't leave the room because we were just having so much fun together. That's something that not everyone can do. And that's one of the things that I do very, very well. Michael, on the other hand, he's developed into a really, really good mixer. If you guys, he was doing it for Denon at shows. So his is the mixing of music and keeping that dance floor going while being able to interact with the people and to hype them up and to keep them bouncing off the walls in our area. Now, if you take Michael and put him into in a market like with Nick Spinelli and where that's more common, he would not be as uncommon as he is here. But for our area, he is uncommon. So you have a charming 20-year-old who can do these things, and he looks good up there, and he's friendly and makes announcements well and everything. That's what he can bring to the table. Most 20-year-olds can't do the things that he can do. Again, those are the items that how we talk about what we can bring to the party that not everyone else can.
And I think it's important. You mentioned Alan Burke, so I'm gonna take something else that he suggested. And if you're struggling finding your USP, print out your reviews and go through and highlight the things that you see repeated over and over and over again from your former clients. What are the things that they're saying about you that makes you stand out? And just they're gonna potentially talk about how the dance floor was great and yada yada yada, but there's gonna be some other things that are gonna be in there, some other pieces that you can pull out that if you're like, yeah, I do that, I didn't realize that stood out. You can start to use that. And the nice thing about that is when you develop your USP, you can then use it in the right way to then attract more clients that respect that piece to your puzzle.
For sure.
Mine for the longest time has always been my organization, right? They would talk about the way the party was and everything else, but the thing that always stands out is they talk about how professional I am and how organized I am, but yet I can be flexible on the go if something needs to come. And being able to use that really kind of puts a lot of couples at ease. Mm-hmm. And so I end up attracting a lot of couples that are very detail oriented, which I'll be honest, helps my planning so much easier because I know they're going to fill stuff out for me. So just using that and again, going back to those reviews, if you don't know where to begin, start there to look to see what your couples are already talking about.
I think, that's a great point and then once you have identified it, you're going to attract those type of couples, which is kind of a weird thing, but it really, you find the people that you will work with and it all kind of just comes together really, really quite nicely. So, okay, let's jump to our next one here. Just gotta get back to where there we are. Let's go to our next topic here. So number 8, Dan, why don't you take that one here? I've got to do some stuff here in the background. So go ahead and jump to the number 8 one, please.
Sure. So one of the biggest components that you're going to have is starting out is just this idea of how to get your name out there, right? Like you can start and you're like, I'm going to be a DJ, and tomorrow I'm going to be a DJ, and nobody knows how to contact you, and nobody knows how to reach out to you, mm-hmm. right? You can be the greatest bedroom DJ in the world, but if you don't have a way to be able to get your name, to get your marketing piece out to everybody, it's not going to mean anything. So you need to start to establish what you're going to spend your time, energy, and finances in to get your name promoted more. Icon at DJX had mentioned that, a few years ago, we would use a lot of our marketing money, finances, right, for pushes and for um, maybe bridal shows and different things like that.
Right.
And even Mike Walter referenced this, where before they used to do a lot of showcases at bridal shows. They've kind of taken a lot of that money. Both groups really kind of mentioned this, taking a lot of that money and now using it towards content creation, whether that is focusing their energies on social media and what they're doing there, or whether it's just getting that content and then working it up so that it looks great and sending it out.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things you have to figure out what's going to work best for you. And the other thing is, look at those that are around you and be different, right? If you've got 10 other DJs in your market that are all doing the same type of thing on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever it is to gain notoriety where you're at, you need to break the pattern. You need to go in a different direction. I'm not saying you don't use Instagram, but don't be them, right?
For
Be
sure.
something different to catch that attention and do that. And look to some of the people that you admire. Your style is different. It's got to be you. It's got to be your message. But how they're going about it would give you that right inspiration to kind of kick your marketing up a notch or two.
Yeah, I think the idea of taking their money and investing it differently is such a huge thing. I mean, we've been in this business myself for 30 years, and I've obviously there's been different areas of it, and the idea of having a person who's there to catch that content. There's your advertising budget. That's the person who's next to you with the camera, and instead of taking 10% of every gig and putting it towards your bridal shows and your marketing, it's 10% of that money's going towards your camera person now.
And that can be a great way to think about it, because I know a lot of us, we struggle. Like I go out by myself. I don't have an assistant. And it's really kind of hard to go, I need to hand over money from the wedding for this person. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to get that idea. But if you think of it from the standpoint of, well, I mean, I don't know if you want to itemize it this way, but it becomes like exactly you said, like a marketing, because while they're assistant, they can also be a content capture, because your your phone or your camera sitting on a stand static is not going to grab the same energy as someone using your phone to capture you doing different things.
And yeah, when it can move from, again, Nick Spinelli has done a wonderful job of this, where they're going from Nick to what he's doing, and then over to the crowd to see response, and just that trifecta is absolutely fabulous and so valuable for what he's doing. So, okay, let's jump to the next one. We got a couple more to hit before we wrap up and send you guys to hang out with Howie in just a few. So one thing that we forget, and I think this is something that newer DJs, it would be great to learn, but you will forget it, and it will kind of slip to the side because it happens to all of us, is basically that your time is valuable. Your time with family is incredibly valuable. The thing is, with your friends and family, they want to go in and do things on weekends, and that's the time when we as DJs are working. So we have to have a balance of personal life and business life, but yet we also have to understand that we can't give our Saturdays away, because I'll tell you, there have been times I've gone, a couple of years ago, I did a $500 show on a Saturday that I took at the last minute. And truthfully, I hated myself. I'm thinking I didn't need the money. Money was nice, yes, for this quick little thing. But this was a beautiful day, beautiful summer day that the kids were out and they went and played in the lake and did this, that, and the other thing. And I threw that experience away, those moments that I can never get back, for a small paycheck, but a paycheck. And it's like, yeah, that I'm not going to do again. The time, and especially those moments with children and family, can't be replaced. So you have to be protective of those.
We only have so many Saturdays. We only have so many days in a year to do the different things. And if you don't have a family yet, it can be very easy I used this phrase earlier, marry your business, right? It can be
Yep.
very easy to kind of fall yourself into that. And unfortunately, even if you do have a family, whether it's, just a spouse or whether it's a spouse and kids, I've seen too many people are in the industry lately that, you know, they were DJs when they met their spouse, and now they're getting divorced from that person, right? Like, so, it's very kind of hazardous to kind of fall into that trap, and very easy to kind of put things, well, I got to work. I've got to work. Yeah, I get it, but you've got also got to find a way to find that balance. Whether that's, taking a specific, weekend a month, or one every two, whatever might be the case that you need, and say, I will not take one here.
Hmm.
And that allows you to think of it as a vacation, to think of it as time that you will spend with that family no matter what.
Excellent. Let's jump to our next one. So we've talked about business. We've talked about a lot of things around that idea. We're going to skip a couple of them. We're going to have a couple that we'll hit on another night. But music, knowledge of music. I think that's a critical one, because at the end of the day, DJs are playing music. And it's not that for most events, you can't just play your favorite genre of music. Studying music, where do you go?
Oh, geez. Where do you go? First off, put some time into it, right? So we have a lot of streaming services out there, Spotify, Pandora, right? That give us the ability to really kind of go into a genre and let it curate what is those most popular tracks. And that can be a great way to put some time and energy in on your own. What you should not do is go, I've got a gig tomorrow. Who on Facebook can give me a playlist? Right? Because that's not doing the studying that you need to be able to understand your music. That's a Hail Mary at the last second. So finding a way to do the streaming service, I think, is a great thing. A lot of times when I'm going into not necessarily a unfamiliar event, but something that maybe I haven't done recently, or I haven't done a lot of that style recently, I'll go to a Sirius XM's channel that does it, or I'll go to, and I'll just, on Pandora, I'll name an artist and I'll be like, play such and such radio. And 9 times out of 10, there's a channel that's created out there somewhere. And it just plays artists and things that are similar to that. And I just jot song after song after song of stuff that makes me kind of go, oh, that has a good vibe. That could work.
A lot of different spots. I'm gonna I think the chill room is probably one of the coolest spots. The Tuesday night music show, and there's a lot of stuff that you'll hear about that you'll never utilize and never play, which is kind of cool for music history. But I think talking to other DJs from around in the chill room, DJNTV.com/chill, I think that's a much better spot than to go and put something on Facebook and ask, because what's kind of cool is that many of our friends in the chill room, they've got their computers set up right there. Oh, hey, here's one. What do you think of this song? Just when you want to ask those questions. I want to hit one last one before we wrap up tonight, so we're going to do one more quick one. So the last one, and it comes to buying gear. We're going to hit this one quick. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it from a dealer. Dan, you made a good point in one of your videos here on Wednesdays that drop every Wednesday morning about this very topic. So I don't want to say more responsible way. I don't want to say the more adult way to do this, but I think the right way is the way we're going to call this when it comes to buying gear. And go.
The right way is establish a relationship with a company. I think there's two things that really come into mind when doing that. One, where are you going to get your support? If something goes wrong with what you bought, not just can you replace it, but are they going to help you troubleshoot? Are they going to help you? Do they care enough about you to try and come alongside you? And then the second thing is, are they supporting the industry? Right? Do they take the time out to help the DJ industry in some form or fashion, or do they just, and you want to buy something? Yeah, send me your money. I gotcha. Right. I think that's a big difference, because there's thousands of companies across the US that you can buy from. But it's going to be the ones that fit those criteria. Also, and I mentioned this in that Wednesday morning piece, is that a lot of times what's on the internet is the lowest price that they're allowed to show. But if you establish a repertoire, or establish a rapport, there we go, with a company, they are more likely to give you a better deal for repeat business, right? You keep going back to them. Hey, we noticed you spent quite a bit of money with us lately. We're gonna give you a little bit of a discount
Mm-hmm.
to keep you coming back. Or they might throw extra things at you that are just ways of saying thank you for what you do, because especially the ones that see those pieces in that business, they know, and they want to keep that going. They don't want you to go to Amazon, right? That doesn't help them in the end. And again, you're not getting the best deal on Amazon. You might be saving on shipping, you think, but you're not getting the best deal, I promise you.
Yeah, it sometimes doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. If you want to buy, a phone charger that you know that you're going to have to be throwing away in 6 months because it dies, go for it. But for things in your business, invest properly. Okay, Dan, we are out of time. Holy cats, things have gone quickly. DJNTV.com/chill, hanging with Howie. They're having a little problem with the microphone, but they'll be hopefully up and running here in just a little bit. But you can pop out there. They'll usually for about 10 o'clock Eastern, they record for about 20 minutes. Then after that, everyone turns on their cameras and mics and chats a little bit. So they'll be getting that going. And then, of course, tomorrow night is the Tuesday Night Music Show. We'll be dropping couple of recorded videos throughout the week. Tomorrow morning, I've got a little spot in Tuesday morning. Dan's got a little spot on Wednesday morning. So, yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff going on. So you can check that out. But Dan, take us home here.
Awesome. Well, whether you're a newbie or whether you're a veteran, hopefully there was a few things in tonight's that you went, I like that idea, or that's a good refresher. Whatever might happen to be the case. Thank you very much for taking time out of your Monday night. You have yourself a wonderful one, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.